Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Thursday, October the 12th, 2023. My name is Cliff. I'm coming to you live from Carter County, Tennessee, here in the middle of the Iron Mountain. So glad to have you with us here. We're streaming live on Twitter or X.com, as it's now called, and YouTube. If you would go there and subscribe to those channels, like the videos, comments, let us know what you think about these stories in the chats. We'll be here every Thursday and Sunday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're glad to have you no matter where you're from, but we're mainly trying to reach out to folks here in the Upper East Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, Southwest Kentucky, and Western North Carolina area because there's things going on in this area that affect us all. And a lot of these issues that we discuss on the channel are part of a larger agenda that we all tend to think that we're a little protected from because we live in a more rural area or even a more red state or a collection of red states. Virginia's kind of purplish, North Carolina is too, and I guess so is Kentucky. They got a Democrat governor, but we feel like in these states here in Appalachia that we're a little more insulated from a lot of the things that are going on in the larger world, and a lot of these things are going on in our local governments, whether it be smart cities, whether it be license plate reading cameras that actually store the data from all the vehicles that go through, not just the license plate, but the details of the vehicles and the inhabitants that are run by a larger company. The smart poles also selling all the data that they collect from everybody who walks through downtown Johnson City goes off to the TVA. So lots of different things that we would think that we're more insulated from are happening in our area, and a lot of people are not aware of those, so that's the reason for the channel. So tonight we're going to get into some news and current events, but if you would, please share this channel with somebody that you think might enjoy it, and we'll get into some of these topics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them in the chat. It's our first night streaming on Twitter, so hey, what's up, Joe? We got Joe in the chat. Glad to hear you. I'm going to try out our new chat and see if I can tell Joe to gas the geese here in the chat on both those platforms. And if you're with me on Twitter, let me know. There it goes. That's going out to Twitter and to YouTube. So we're so glad to have you with us. Glad to have that multiple channels going so we can definitely build an audience. We actually had a follow from local news and our state representative, or not our state representative, our federal congressional representative on Twitter. So hopefully they'll tune into the channel and say what's up. Be glad to have you with us, Mrs. Harshbarger, and all you folks over there at WJHL, WCYB. I know there's some things y'all can't touch. You're owned by Nexstar. You're owned by Sinclair. It's okay. I understand. You can send tips to the Iron Mountain Hour at gmail.com. We can get those stories out there. Hey, what's up? Glad to have you, Joe. Hey, so a few stories on these Thursday night shows. We like to bing, bang, bing, bang, bang right through them. So we're going to start over here in Kingsport. Kingsport's going to host 2 GLOW cycling events. I'm not sure what that means, but I will say cycling on the GLOW is in the Kingsport Greenbelt. And you know why I'm in favor of this? Because it gets bicycles off my roads. You know I'm not for government spending, and I was against the Tweetsie Trail, but there is one well, aside from people getting in shape, a lot of people are actually using it, and that's a good thing that they are. But the main thing is, keeps those bicycles out of my way. Now, if you're on a bicycle on a 2-lane, busy road with a high speed limit, you're asking for trouble. Please get out of my way and go ride on the Green Belt or the Tweetsie Trail. We'd love to have you go down there. So I'm definitely in support of anything that gets bicycles out of my way. They're going to have this at October the 21st. That's a Saturday on the Rotherwood Trail. And then they're going to go November the 18th at 4:30 p.m. on the Indian Trail Drive Trailhead. And that's near PetSmart. And take your helmet and bring your bike and have a reflector and get on down there and have a ride on the GLOW. That's right. Just stay out of my road. Next story we've got over in Bristol. Bristol, Virginia. City leaders address rising homelessness concerns, aim for equitable solutions. This is from WCYB. Over in Bristol. Now, as we read in the story a little bit, let's the working to find a solution. That's the message from Bristol, Virginia city leaders addressing an increase in the unsheltered population. Unsheltered. Why do we change the name for things constantly? Does it change what something is because we say a name that, I mean, it's kind of like the word retard was used as an insult, and then they changed it to, from mentally retarded to developmentally disabled. And then, and then now people kind of use that as a slur to mean "Are you stupid?" So it's just like this. Pretty soon, people who had their feelings hurt by the word retarded will have their feelings hurt by developmentally disabled. They'll have to change that again. And it's just like changing the word homeless to unsheltered. Well, I mean, let's call it what it is. Have an equitable solution, they say, for those who are homeless, business owners, and people spending time downtown. Officials at Virginia Police Department, or Bristol, Virginia Police Department, say they've seen an uptick in the homeless population. They say they've seen a great increase in vagrancy and trespassing complaints, public intoxication, and drug use, says Captain Maynard Ratcliffe of the Bristol, Virginia Police Department. Puts a hard strain on us and manpower dealing with this. Some days it's more than 5 or 6 calls a day getting those type of calls. And I'm not a heartless person. I'm all for helping people. I'm definitely for giving people opportunities, but there are lots of opportunities for homeless people if they're willing to not do drugs and alcohol, and a lot of them aren't willing to follow curfews and things like this, but they choose to be homeless. Now, in and of itself, that's fine. If you're going to be a hobo and ride the rails, whatever, have a good time. But when you start getting on other people's properties and peeing in public and doing drugs in public, passing out in the streets, and having to have people come get you out of the streets because you've overdosed, that's when you're infringing on other people's property. You're infringing on their rights, and that's not okay. So, I mean, they have these programs for these folks. If they choose not to go in them and they go out and they break the law, I mean, we have vagrancy laws on the books. If you're publicly intoxicated, they can arrest you. So, that might be. I guess a lot of them are probably in and out of jail. A lot of the habitually homeless, but there's most of the people who don't want to be homeless will take advantage of those programs and get off the streets. Now that's not everything. There's exceptions to the rule. There's different kinds of people out there, but at the end of the day, let's help these people get into the programs. If they refuse to go into the programs, if they refuse to accept any help and they just want to live on the streets, well, that's okay. But I would say use some of those vagrancy laws, use some of those public intoxication laws to keep them from infringing on the rights of people who are trying to enjoy a city that they paid taxes for, that they don't, your taxes don't go to, keeping the streets nice and clean so that people can sleep there and make a mess in them. It's just kind of common sense, I guess, but I don't know. Let's see what the Bristol News 5 says. They ask if there is a home answer when it comes to addressing the homeless situation here in Bristol. And they said one thing that's important to remember is we're not going to solve homelessness. That's not something that I'm anticipating us doing. Every other city has tried it, and we're not going to be a magic solution to the homelessness, said the Mayor Neil Osborne of Bristol, Virginia. I can guarantee you we're going to try to make it better, but I don't think there is one solution. And I think he's right about that. You have to acknowledge, and it's something that it's not, politically correct to acknowledge, that some people just want to be homeless. I've known plenty of people that want to be homeless, and they don't even see it as a bad thing that they're homeless. So why would they want to change it? A lot of people enjoy that lifestyle. Let's see. What's our next story? But with all the drug use amongst the homeless population, it's really a sad thing because a lot of them are, it's easy to say, well, why don't you just quit drugs and go get a job? A lot of them are addicted to drugs, and they have to quit the drugs in order to have access to, get to the job. So a lot of times they are kind of between a rock and a hard place. Well, some people would say, could be a partial solution. The Governor Lee today visited a new recovery center in Johnson City. Now, what is this recovery center? It's called Families Free, and they're opening a women's recovery center in Johnson City, and they opened a recovery center for men in Roan Mountain in the former prison facility. So the governor came to Johnson City today to tour the facility, and I looked into a little bit of Families Free, and what it appears to be is a program to help people rehabilitate after they get out of prison and jail and work their way back into the world. And where'd it go here? I'm gonna look it up again. I had it pulled up in my show notes, but I guess I've closed it. But I can't help but be reminded of a program that was rumored it was the Crossroads program. I'm not sure if this was the case or not, but I always heard rumors that the owner of the Crossroads program in Carter County was married to one of the judges here in Carter County. And the name of the judge would change, and but people consistently, spoke that rumor. So I'm not sure if that's something that was true or not, but it kind of does seem like, well, if that's the case, that would be a conflict of interest, where you'd have a judge deciding that someone has to be treated for drug or alcohol rehabilitation, sentencing them to complete it, and I'm imagining that the state takes over some of the cost, and then the individual will be responsible for some of the cost. But either way, would it be ethical for that judge to sentence someone to his wife's program? And I don't know, but this Family's Free, I noticed they have a .com website, so I thought, well, that sounds like they're a commercial entity, but I go onto their About page, and it says they're a 501c3 organization designed to build better communities through the transformation of vulnerable families, especially those affected by incarceration. Families Free provides evidence-based services combined with the faith-based principles of compassion, healing, and restoration to promote positive lifestyle changes within our communities most at risk and overlooked populations. And it shows that they get funding from the Department of Mental Health, Substance Abuse, Department of Children's Services, and Department of Health. So I think that's interesting to note, because in this article with Governor Lee, he says, when we see a program like this in a local community that is effective and has results and is being funded privately and locally, then we come alongside and ask what that program could use most. Well, are they being funded privately and locally if they're getting money from the state for all that stuff? I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but what's your thoughts on this? I tend to just see another government program that's going to, basically, it just seems like all these state programs tend to recycle people through the state and make sure you keep coming back to the state and have to get everything from the state. And Tennessee is often seen as like this, really conservative, really, or even libertarian state, where in the idea that, well, there's less government in Tennessee, and that's just not true. The state of Tennessee's government is a very progressive government. They don't have a state income tax, and they're pretty good on gun laws, but the fact of the matter is they have pretty much a department of everything that pretty much everybody has to register with and follow the rules if you want to operate in one kind of profession or another. And then there's also the state departments of health that kind of oversee everything. So it's a very large state government that has a lot of different things that it spends money on, a lot of different programs that it does. But the state's funding this thing among other people, and I noticed there's a lot of there's a couple of women's organizations in the Tri-Cities, and they tend to not have, I've worked in these shelters before, and when I go into them, there's usually a few to none to a few women in them, and there usually be like a handful of men to a couple of dozen men, just depending. But there's rarely that many women in these places. And there are a couple of just for women ministries, and I think that's probably a good thing. Probably helps women keep from being victimized. Because a lot of times it can be hard for homeless people to report crimes and things like this. So, I mean, the Women's Recovery Center in Johnson City, could it be a good thing? I don't know. There's a lot of women who need to recover. So you could argue over whether it should be funded by the state or whatever. But, seems like something I can't really complain about for the amount of people in this area that have problems. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it is funded in large part by a settlement with the state from an opioid company. So one of these actually, I think it was two different opiate companies who manufactured pills and sold them as non-addictive, got a whole bunch of people addicted to on them. Tennessee was one of the worst states. And they actually lost a lawsuit to where they have to pay, and that part of the money from that settlement from that lawsuit is going to cover this recovery center and the Family's Free centers in Tennessee. So at least that's one good thing, man. They're making these big pharmaceutical companies pay back and using it to help the community. All right. I'm all right with that. Let's go on to national news. Oh, wait a minute. Before we do national. Oh, wait a minute. This is part of the national, actually. So our national and local is going to kind of come together tonight. So Feel free to chime in on the chat. Let me know what you think about these things. I am going to be adding a phone number because not really anybody was using the Skype to call in. So I'm going to be adding a phone number so you guys can call in directly to the channel. Make it a whole lot easier for you. You don't have to worry about showing your face and all that good stuff. Just come on in. Let me know what you think about these stories. This is from Newsweek. Whoops. And we talked about the other day about the Hamas attack on Israel, and how we knew that, this is going to be calls for more money to go from the United States over to Israel, and this is going to be yet another war we are funding, and they're going to be trying to get us into it. But let's look at this story from Newsweek. Day of Jihad sparks warnings for Americans to stay inside. Americans are armed and will not be intimidated. Commenters, including Rep. Matt Gaetz, have said after a former Hamas chief called for a day of jihad by Muslim communities around the world on Friday, October the 13th. And he says he now heads the group's diaspora office in Qatar, told Reuters on Wednesday that Muslims should head to the squares and streets of Arab and Islamic world on Friday and hold mass protests in support of the Palestinians as conflict intensifies with Israel. And he also called for Muslims to show anger on Friday and send a message of rage to Zionists and to America, according to a transcript posted on X, formerly Twitter. Now, Gaetz, a Florida Republican, shared the post about his comments, adding, "F around and find out. Floridians are armed and we won't be intimidated." And a lot of other people are saying, like this guy says, "Don't leave your home, Joey Manarino, unless it's an emergency. Avoid public transit, avoid airplanes, avoid public events." Now, who knows if anything comes by this. This Jason Howerton, an ex-user with 108,000 followers, said, "Don't be paranoid, but absolutely be strapped." Another social media user who runs a firearms business in Tennessee asked followers on X what weapons they would be carrying on Friday. Don't answer that. What are you, a Fed? No, I'm just kidding. But whether or not anything comes to this, I don't know. The 9mm SMG here on X says tomorrow's going to be interesting to watch. Every fat boomer with his head on a swivel at Applebee's waiting on paragliding terrorists to take over their town. And I said there's going to be 1911s cocked and locked all the way around. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If you've had a threat like that by a terrorist organization, especially when you've had the border wide open, and we've seen the amount of people coming through, how many of those people, we already know it's on record that a lot of them are from the Middle East, a lot of them are Chinese. It's not just Mexicans and Guatemalans and Nicaraguans coming through there. It's people from all over the world, and they're just pouring through. So if somebody wanted to put an invasion force through, all they'd pretty much have to do would be pay off the cartel, and they could send them right through. So the idea that that's unfeasible is kind of laughable. Now, maybe years ago, not, but just imagine if you had, groups of these guys just waiting, kind of like you did, if you believe the official story. But I think whether you believe the official story or not, the part is true about Muhammad Atta and his guys. They were in the country for a long time beforehand, and they were being totally suspicious and even when they tipped people off, nobody followed up on it. It was like people were intentionally ignoring it. So don't want to intentionally ignore it. You don't want to go crazy and be paranoid, but numbers are very significant to a lot of these people, especially when you think about the fact that if you follow this channel, you probably have an idea that a lot of world events do not happen on the days that they happen for coincidentally. For example, 9/11 is a day that goes way, way back. September 11th is significant for centuries, or for millennia even, among occult circles. And you go back to 1991, 10 years before, that was when George H.W. Bush, he announced the formation of the New World Order on his famous speech, "A New World Order, where the law," what is it he says, "where the rule of law and not the law of the jungle governs the conduct of mankind." But he was really excited about that. His 1,000 Points of Light speech, if you want to watch that, check it out. September 11th, 1991, exactly 10 years before September 11th, 2001, where we had the Twin Towers attacks. And what happens to be tomorrow is a Friday the 13th, October the 13th, 2023, exactly 716 years after October the 13th, 07. Well, what happened in October the 13th, 2007. That was the day the Knights Templars were all arrested. I'm going to read you this real quick. This is from the KnightsTemplar.org on Friday the 13th. Today is Friday the 13th. Many people at the superstitious store consider Friday the 13th to be unlucky. There are people who wear good luck charms all day, and some go as far as to refuse to leave home lest something unlucky happen to them. Many don't know that the legend of the Friday the 13th as unlucky comes from the persecution of Knights Templar in the 14th century. On Friday, October the 13th, 1307, King Philip IV of France, in league with Pope Clement V, ordered all Templars to be rounded up and thrown in prison. The Knights were accused of numerous crimes, including heresy and treason. For 200 years, the Knights Templar had been the most dominant force in Christendom, but their defeat at the Siege of Acre and the loss of the Holy Land, their influence began to wane. Now, we go down, we'll see what really happened here. It's very important. Now, this, a lot of people say that the Knights Templar have survived and gone on as groups like the Freemasons and the Rosicrucian Society, lots of these other semi-secret societies that have survived to this day. But the Knights Templar had actually, if you know what the Knights Templar were, or if you don't know what they were a group of nobility who basically got together and they would give escorts to pilgrims through to the Holy Lands. They would save money for people. They had the ability to say, take in your money if you were traveling to the Holy Land and you were leaving Germany and you didn't want to carry all your gold with you, you could deposit your gold with them and they would give you a slip. And it was kind of, a lot of people say it was the origin of the banknote, and they would give you a note to where you would take down to the Knights Templar outpost in Jerusalem or wherever you're going, and you would have a Knights Templar escort on the way down there to protect you from bandits or raiders or whoever else might happen upon the way. And when you would get down there, and you would receive your gold when you presented your ticket to the Knights Templar down there. And doing this, the Knights Templar were able to raise a lot of money. They were able to become very powerful and influential, and they were doing a lot of fighting in the Crusades. Now, Philip IV wanted to finance, he was the king of France, he wanted to finance a war with England. And he was a terrible king and a terrible military commander. So he was defeated very easily, and this made him, look terrible, and also, not only did he look terrible for losing the war, he also looked terrible to the church. And so to kind of get on the Pope's good side and also try to get his money back so he could, not be in debt, because he'd borrowed all this money from the Knights Templar, he arrests the Knights Templar. Now, the Pope had already didn't like the Knights Templar and called for actions against them. But anyway, this way he was able to curry favor with the Pope and eliminate his debt to the Knights Templar. So he imprisoned all the Templars on Friday, October the 13th, 2007, and seized all their property. There was his debt repaid and then some. And then he arrested the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, who was kind of like Hiram Abif, I guess, is the Jesus for the Jesus-like figure, even though they still acknowledge Jesus and everything, for the Masons. And then you've got Jacques de Molay, who's kind of a secondary. He's kind of their John the Baptist, I guess you could say. They even have a youth organization called the de Molays. But anyway, the trial, according to the Templars, was a farce. They were charged with heresy. They were charged with doing satanic sacrifices and all these kind of things. They were convicted and tortured, and they were tortured until they confessed, and then they were convicted. But a lot of the Templars weren't captured. A lot of them escaped with a lot of fortunes, and many people say that they became the Freemasonic and other semi-secret organizations. Now they're not so secret, but back in the days they were. So that was the reason that was done on Friday the 13th, is it had a significant reason too. And if you'll hold on just a second, I'm going to find this, because it's a common myth that was the reason for Friday the 13th being unlucky. And hang on just a second, I have an article that we're going to look at about why that is. One of the reasons that 13 was was supposedly unlucky is because they were, Judas was the 13th apostle, right? And he was the one who turned on Christ. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry. I meant to have this ready for you for this story. And this is from Time magazine. It's waiting on it to pull up here. This is why Friday the 13th is spelled unlucky. Fear of Friday the 13th has spawned a horror movie franchise, its own hard-to-produce term, paraskevidekatriophobia, and the tradition of widespread paranoia that rolls around each year. Well, folk historians say it's tough to pinpoint exactly how the two became. Many believe it originates from the Last Supper and the 13 guests who sat at the table the day before Friday on which Christ was crucified. And we got Kia here. I'm not buying your Kia. I closed the ad and it's still playing the music. I'm sorry. It's terrible. But the Christian interpretation launched into a phenomenon that leads Americans to believe avoid staying in hotel rooms with the number 13, avoid venturing up to the 13th floor of the building, try not to sit in the 13th row of an airplane, and a lot of people say that's where the original Friday the 13th came from. And that may be true, but that's one of the reasons that the king chose Friday the 13th to lock that catacomb, because that number has some significance to people. And so let's look at the significance of the number 13. Here we're going to start with the Encyclopedia Britannica. Triskaidekaphobes believe the 13 to be unlucky, especially when the 13th of the month is a Friday, a fear reinforced by the explosion that almost wrecked Apollo 13 lunar spacecraft in 1970. Skeptics note that, and I think they make a pretty good point, that it returned to Earth safely. So there's a lot worse it could have turned out. You could have, I guess you're pretty lucky if you fly outside of the atmosphere and make it way back. Maybe the 13th is a lucky symbol. They say it actually probably relates to Judas Iscariot being the 13th person at the Last Supper, but the negative undertones go back much earlier, probably because the extra 13th item spoils the auspicious 12. There are 13 lunar months in the year, and this led the Hebrews to consider the 13 as auspicious. And then it also has positive aspects because it's the number 10 plus the number 3, which the number 10 is the perfect number, and the 3 is also the sign of the Trinity. But then you've also got the fact that it's the 7, which is the day of perfection, and you've got 6, which is the day of man. And you know the number 666, the number of a man, is based on 6. Man was created on the 6th day, and the perfection was God, and that was the 7th day, and that's when God rested. So you put the two together, and that is significant to a lot of members of these occult followings, because that's where they strive to be, is the balance between man and God is the 6 and 7, and the 7 representing Jesus the Christ, and the 6 representing man, or the son of man, and the devil, and how those are both sides of the same coin is very important in all these occult practices. So we could see that if there were something going to happen, even up to and including some sort of false flag event, a number like that would be a good day for them to do it. So while I'm not saying you should, be wearing your plate carrier all day and, go to work with your rifle strapped on, it might be a good idea to be aware of what's going on in your surroundings, because an attack like this would be more significant. It'd be easier for them to pull off in a big city because everybody's unarmed there. But if they were able to pull it off on a small town, that would kind of be, it's what, 23 years after 9/11, 22 years after 9/11. That would be a, because there they hit and they showed we were vulnerable in the city. Everybody thought the United States wasn't vulnerable at all, and then the biggest city gets whacked with a couple of jet airliners, and you realize, oh, we are vulnerable. Well, the opposite of that, it's one of the reasons I think a lot of these kind of school shootings get so publicized, is they want you to know in the small towns, oh, you're not safe there either. And so I could see something like this popping off in a small town. So, like I said, no reason to be alarmed, but keep your head on a swivel. If you see something, say something, as they say. Now, I do want to look at Rep Harshbarger, who followed the channel. I saw her tweet here. She's happy to announce the safe return of all members of Sunnyside Baptist from Israel. While we celebrate their arrival, we continue to pray for our fellow Americans and friends in Israel who remain embattled in this conflict. Now, when we talked about the other day on the thing on the Sunday show about what could be, that was one of the things I could see that would make the U.S. kind of have to go in there and take some action as American citizens being harmed in these attacks or killed in these attacks, or American hostages being taken. And they were able to get those back. Let's look at this story from WKRN. Kingsport, Tennessee. A total of 48 youth and adult members of the Sunnyside Baptist Church landed in Atlanta, Georgia on Tuesday following a trip to Israel. They were visiting the country to tour religious sites when an unexpected attack from a militant group near Hamas hit near the Gaza Strip. They stayed in a hotel from that point on and waited the flight back to America. They made it back safely and are back in Kingsport. So that's a good thing. Glad to hear that. Excellent news. But that's what really, that's the kind of thing that really makes this a dangerous situation for us going forward, is we could be drawn into this. If there's American citizens over there, they have to do something about it. You can't just let people take your citizens hostage and kill them and not do anything about it. So just hope this doesn't drag into a bigger conflict with us being involved in it. I could definitely see that happening. There's almost unanimous support for Israel in the Congress and in the White House. So I could very quickly see it, being something like where they're giving Ukraine money forever and sending weapons and stuff. I can see that happening with Israel. We ought to give them $3.3 billion every year in defense aid. And they have a pretty strong military. Some people say they have the fourth strongest military in the world. And I feel like they're, more than capable of defending themselves against Hamas and maybe even Hezbollah. A lot of people are saying, from Lebanon coming in from their north is a possibility. But I really think they're capable of defending against those. So let's let them handle their business and let's keep the United States out of it. Keep our boots off the ground. We already give them enough money, I think, but they're already giving them money. I think we've given Ukraine a total of $113 billion or something like that. So I expect Israel to get way more than that if this continues to go on. Unfortunately, we still got folks in the street ain't got nothing to eat, and homeless folks in the U.S. A lot of jobs that people can't fill. A lot of people that want jobs that can't get jobs in the fields that they need. A lot of people that aren't willing to work, and a lot of people, are caught in the middle, and they want a dime from all of us for it. So, you know what? I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. But I just want to thank you for joining us so much. It is 10:30. I'm going to get off here. This is the Iron Mountain Hour. Again, like, share, and subscribe on all the platforms. And join us in the fight against the Smart City agenda. The agenda of our betters to keep us in line, have cameras on us everywhere we go, keep in check with everything we do on the internet, control our cars, have us limited to a small range where we'll be easily controlled, and they are able to access all the bounties of the earth while we're trapped into small 15-minute cities, smart cities, and playing virtual reality games and eating bugs that, we've got some chip in our head to make us think they taste like a steak, kind of like the Matrix, when you're just really eating gruel. But anyway, that's a topic for another show, and we will get into that because we often do. And I'm so glad to have you with us tonight on YouTube and Twitter. Please tune back in this coming Sunday. We're going to get into a conspiracy topic of some sort, and might pop up on Twitter and YouTube again between now and then. I think I'm going to start doing more weekly shows at night, so I'd love to have you guys join us on those. So look for us in your notifications. Set those for all, that way you don't miss any, and we'd love to have you back. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Hey, what's up, Dalton and Spill? Glad to have you in the chat. I'm sorry. And hey, Joe, give me an amen there. Hey, you know what? This is pretty nice. I like this chat here where I'm streaming through Twitter and YouTube. I get the timestamp for every chat. I get where it came from. So great. Dalton says, grope your rope. That's right. You got to every now and then. Hey, but listen, I'm so glad y'all joined us, and I'm glad to have you back, Spill. Haven't seen you in the chat in a while. Hope to see you some more, and definitely follow us on Twitter or X if you're on there, on the Rumble too, and give us a like on there and give us a subscribe so we can stream on all these different platforms. We'd love to have you everywhere. We're going to get everywhere. See you later.